Hello, everybody. How is everyone today? We got a bit of a glow up here at Uncommon Sense Parenting. It was time to get a desk. So I rearranged my office. I got a new desk. So now we've got the famous cup. We've got our posse slogan and our trusty time timers joining us in the shot now. And, just a wee bit of greenery. It was time for a change. Tell me what you think. I am still on the hunt for an amazing desk chair, though. This dining chair sitch is just not sustainable. So if you have work chair recommendations about, a chair that you love, please send me the link. It feels really scary to buy a chair right now for some reason. Like, how much do I actually trust Wayfair and Amazon reviews with my butt and my back? It just feels like a huge commitment. I don't know if I'm the only one who feels that way. Maybe I'm just experiencing decision fatigue. All right. Let's make sure we can see our comments here. Yes, alrighty. On to our topic today, which is parenting differently than your parents did. A lot of parents express anxiety about the fact that this isn't what my parents did, or when I was growing up, this was the expectation, or that was the expectation. And the fact that your reality looks different from the one that you grew up in doesn't actually match your own lived experience. It brings up all kinds of anxiety about if we're doing something wrong, if something is happening with our kids and it's our fault for not doing what our parents did. Often this comes up when I'm talking with a parent and their parent has expressed disapproval or curiosity about how we're parenting our kids. I've had potential clients even express to me that they don't want to work with me because they're afraid of what their parents would think, or they're afraid that working with a coach would hurt their parents. Before we jump into that, though, allow me to introduce myself. Hi, I'm Allana Robinson. I'm a parenting coach for parents of toddlers, preschoolers, and kindergartners, and I help you understand why your children are misbehaving and how to fix it without yelling, shaming, or timeouts. I'm your host here on the MudRoom. I'm also the host of the Parenting Posse Facebook group, which I would love for you to join, and I'm the creator of the Parentability program, where I help you raise well-behaved kids of your own. So there is no denying that there's been a paradigm shift in how parents learn to parent. I actually asked my own mom a while back, when you had problems with me or my brother, how did you learn to solve them? And her answer was so foreign to me as a millennial parent. Just having to imagine being in that situation gives me anxiety. Because her answer was, most of the time I thought back to a semi-similar situation that I've experienced before, either with you, with kids I babysat, with kids I grew up with, or with my own mom and siblings, or by observing other parents. And if it felt like how they handled it was effective, I mimicked it. And if it felt like it wasn't effective, I handled it the opposite. My watch is telling me that I have an elevated heart rate while inactive. That's how much anxiety that gives me. And I'll say, I have a great relationship with my mom. She was fair. She never hurt us. She was empathetic. She's one of those moms that everybody wanted. I still have childhood friends who will say things like, oh, I wanted your mom so bad. I loved coming to your house. My mom was an amazing mom, so it must have worked for her. But y'all, how terrifying is that thought of not being able to look up a study or even check in with a friend when you're trying to problem solve with your kids? Anyways, there's a reason that I'm telling you this, and it's that our parents were doing the best they could with what they had. And mostly that was their lived experience, maybe a book from the library, maybe if they were lucky, a doctor or a therapist. And when they criticize us, it's because from their objective perspective and experience, it worked out. here we are. We're alive and well, and for the most part, better than they could have ever imagined us turning out. So they do exactly what my mother described. They think back to their own lived experience, and they either replicate or do the opposite based on how that went. They didn't have access to the internet. We do. So there's a fundamental difference in how we solve problems. As millennial parents, we have access to subject matter experts almost all the time. There's sleep coaches and parenting coaches and dietitians and doctors and occupational therapists all at our fingertips. And we can meet with these people and consult with them without even having to leave our home, often without even having to wait. As millennials, we look to experts. Our parents look to the past. So when your parents are curious about what you're doing or criticize your parenting, it's because to them your logic doesn't follow. They don't understand why you're doing what you're doing. And when we do something different from how they remember handling similar situations, it feels like a criticism to them because of how they solve problems based on what worked or didn't in the past. You doing something different unintentionally says to them what you did was ineffective or wrong. And it's why so many parents are scared to really change how they parent, even if they're down in the pit and nothing that they're trying is really working, because we don't have a reference for that. We feel this push and pull between our own lived experience, our parents' anxiety, and what the experts are saying. And often we have to try out like one or two things with an expert before we feel that we can really trust them. It's why as millennials, we often feel like we can't do anything right, because our lived experience and what our parents are telling us don't often match up with what the external information we have is, which often leaves us feeling like we're stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? So what can you do if you're vibing with me here and feeling like, yes, okay, you want to try something different than what you experienced as a child, but you're worried about how your parents will react and or interfere? Well, first, remind yourself that this is your child and you get to decide how you raise them. No matter how close your kids may be with your parents, you know your children best. And you get to decide what kind of experience you want them to have. Your decision is not a comment on what your parents did. It's just your own decision. And then plan your response to their criticism if it comes. I have had to say to both of my parents several times, my choices for my family are not a comment on your choices for me. I am making this decision based off of evidence-based practice, evidence-based best practice, not based on how successfully or unsuccessfully I feel that you handled similar situations with me. Now, I'm a pretty straight shooter. I can do and say that to my parents. But you might have to change your approach and your wording so it lands more successfully with yours. You can also invite your parents to learn with you. So my dad was perpetuating some pretty toxic masculinity stuff with my boys, and I was like, hey, so I learned some interesting stuff about the effect of shame on children, and I thought that you would be interested in it. And because I approached it from the perspective that my parents love my children and they want the best for them too, versus that my parents are the enemy and I have to protect my children from them, it was actually pretty well received. It's just a spirit of, hey, so I learned something pretty interesting and it's really changed X about how I do things. I thought you'd be interested to learn it too. Because, right, our parents aren't Googling answers. The concept of an online parenting support group is so foreign to them. Their support groups were the local play group where, moms huddled around the coffee pot and swapped war stories. That was part of their lived experience that they were drawing from. So the idea that you not only do that online, not once a week, but every day, let alone that you're paying for a program to teach you how to integrate all of that information into your family, is just a very, very foreign concept to them. They don't see it as taking what you know, what they taught you, and building off of that. So the more you can relate it back to something that they did teach you, the better. Hey, remember how you were always on my ass about my tone of voice? Well, my parenting coach taught me that modeling the tone of voice we want is actually the most effective way to teach kids the correct tone, and shaming them about the tone they used actually reinforces it. So instead of correcting him, we just say it as he would if he could. See how that is very different than don't talk to my kid that way? Or don't shame my child for speaking in a less than ideal tone? It shares the information. You're not contradicting them. You're not throwing out what they taught you. You're just improving upon it. And this can also work if you're genuinely doing the exact opposite of what they did. Just look at the goal that they were trying to achieve. So if your parents are on your ass because they think you're being too easy on your kids, which is something that comes up all the time, chances are it's because that gives them anxiety that your kids won't listen or are going to challenge authority when it's not appropriate. And that's because they're worried that they won't be treated well or well received when they're in other people's care. So you can totally say, like, you know how you used to tell me that I need to listen because my teacher won't let me do whatever I want? Well, I've been learning about how to teach him to recognize when he's reaching his limit and how to advocate for himself so that the teacher will know he's not just being defiant, he's struggling to regulate. Just like we have to make our learning explicit for our kids, we often have to do the same for our parents too. So how does that feel? Does it feel doable? What anxieties do you have about how your parents perceive your parenting? Have they stopped you from doing something or using a strategy that you otherwise feel would be beneficial to your children? How have you tried to get them on side? I'd love for you to tell me in the comments, and maybe I can give you some ideas on how to navigate that. One of the first ways you can bring your parents into your learning is by signing up for my scripts for managing crazy making behavior. It's a package of 10 scripts for 10 really common behaviors, and in the scripts, it describes the logic behind the script as well. Each one's only like 2 to 3 minutes long, so it's really quick and a really easy way to bring your parents into your learning. And they're totally free. The link for them is in the description box. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you for being here with me, and I'll see you next week for another Uncommon Sense parenting class.